Thanks for watching Endgame Economics. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. It's completely free for you, and it helps us continue making more videos like this.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right in to unpack the totally fascinating, often contradictory, and currently turbulent economic engine of Boston, Massachusetts. Now we're looking at a city that literally holds the title of the smartest in America. It boasts more lab space than anywhere else on Earth, and it graduates more PhDs per capita than basically any other city. But at the exact same time, it's one of the most unequal, most expensive, and honestly, as of some recent shifts heading into 2026, one of the most quietly vulnerable cities in the entire country. Today, we're going to explore how a colonial port that was famous for smuggling tea transformed into an absolute powerhouse of a brain economy, and we'll dig into why that very empire might actually be standing on increasingly fragile ground.
Okay, let's dive into this with a number that's honestly almost difficult to comprehend. $12 trillion. While all the headlines usually obsess over Harvard and biotech startups, there's this entire parallel Boston economy operating out of massive glass towers right in the financial district. According to recent analysis, the 10 largest Boston-based money managers collectively oversee more than $12 trillion in assets. Just to put that into perspective for a second, that is larger than the entire annual GDP of every single country on Earth except for the US and China. It's this massive, quietly humming financial machine employing tens of thousands of people who are earning significantly more than the national average. But here's the thing, you absolutely cannot understand Boston without looking at the other side of the coin. $8. That is the shocking median net worth for non-immigrant, US-born black households in the exact same metropolitan area. And that's according to a landmark Federal Reserve Bank of Boston study. Not $8,000, $8. This right here is the paradox of Boston. You have an economy where 10 money managers oversee $12 trillion, sitting right on top of neighborhoods experiencing profound systemic poverty. It's essentially a tale of two entirely different economies that just happen to share the exact same geographic space.
So, to untangle how a genius city built an empire that's now kind of crushing its own residents, here is our roadmap for the explainer. First up, the boom. Second, a history of reinvention. Third, the burden. And finally, number 4, the 2026 brink.
Part 1. The boom. Brains and billions.
Boston's entire economic foundation rests on what we call EDS and MEDS, education and medicine. And this isn't just a sector. It's the bedrock underneath almost everything else in the city. We're talking about an incredibly intricate network of universities and hospitals that together throw off roughly $156 billion in annual economic output. Now, you might hear critics of older industrial cities completely dismiss this kind of reliance on nonprofits. The argument usually goes something like this. Well, hospitals and universities are largely tax-exempt, they don't pay property taxes on most of the real estate, and they basically just suck up federal grant money without creating real exportable wealth. It's a really common steelman argument that frames these institutions as glorified cost centers just dressed up in scrubs and academic robes.
But in Boston's case, at least, that argument is empirically wrong, and the reason is the multiplier effect. You see, Massachusetts pulls in the highest per capita federal National Institutes of Health funding in the entire country. That federal research money flows straight into university labs. Then, those labs spin out highly profitable startups. Those startups go on to lease super expensive commercial real estate. And they hire literal armies of lawyers, accountants, and consultants who all generate the taxable income that ultimately funds municipal services. Plus, EDS and MEDS create a uniquely resilient workforce. I mean, think about it. When the stock market crashes, people still get sick, and students definitely still enroll in college. This stability is exactly what helped Boston weather the 2008 Great Recession and the COVID-19 pandemic so much better than its peer cities.
And the ultimate proof of this whole multiplier effect is Kendall Square, which is often called the most innovative square mile on Earth. But it really wasn't always this way. Back in the early 1900s, it was an industrial wasteland that literally housed a carcass rendering plant. Its transformation into the global capital of biotech required 3 very specific ingredients. First, proximity. MIT moved its campus there in 1916, proving that when it comes to innovation, physical closeness absolutely matters. Second, policy. In the late 1970s, Cambridge boldly legalized recombinant DNA research when other cities were totally panicking about genetic engineering. They effectively birthed the biosciences industry right next to a subway station. And third, capital. Massive state initiatives and an absolute torrent of venture capital poured in to turbocharge the whole ecosystem.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Chapter 2, A History of Reinvention.
You know, Boston didn't just wake up one morning and decide to be a biotech hub. Its true superpower is knowing exactly when to pivot. Tracing back through the eras, Boston has reinvented its entire economy at least 3 full times. Back in the 1770s, it was a colonial seaport. The famous Boston Tea Party? That wasn't just a political tantrum, it was local merchants aggressively protecting their margins against a British monopoly. When shipping faded, they pivoted in the 1800s to industrial textile mills. Then, when the mills moved south for cheaper labor in the mid-20th century, Boston didn't collapse like some other industrial cities. No, they pivoted to defense contracting and the Route 128 tech corridor. And when Route 128 lost out to Silicon Valley in the 90s, they basically threw that dying industry overboard again, pivoting straight into the biotech and asset management empire we see today. For Boston, survival literally means never being too loyal to your current industry.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, the burden, the price of prosperity.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the brutal math proving the dark side of all this success. This massive brain-based prosperity of the last few decades, it's created a gravitational pull so incredibly strong that the resulting economy is one a huge number of Bostonians can no longer afford to even participate in. Let's imagine a public school teacher and her husband earning $175,000 a year. Nationally speaking, that is comfortably middle class. But in Boston, they are completely priced out. The median single-family home in the region hit $833,900 in 2025, meaning to afford just an entry-level starter home, you need a household income of over $162,000, and renting is arguably even worse. The median asking rent for a 3-bedroom home has hit $4,500 a month. You need to earn roughly $180,000 just to safely make rent. At this point, Boston is officially more expensive to rent in than Manhattan.
This intense cost-burden squeeze leads us right back to that devastating contrast we brought up earlier. When you look at the wealth distribution, the gap is absolutely staggering. A white household median net worth of nearly $250,000 sits directly opposite a black household median net worth of just $8. The physical distance between these two realities, say, walking from the multi-million-dollar brownstones of Beacon Hill over to the struggling census tracts of Roxbury or Mattapan, is just a short walk. But the economic distance? It is functionally an ocean.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly why this gap exists in the first place. It is deeply driven by structural historical exclusion. Because home equity is the single largest source of middle-class wealth in America, the homeownership gap really tells the whole story. 66% of white households own their homes, compared to only 35% of black households and 30% of Hispanic households. Decades of redlining and exclusion from neighborhood investments literally locked entire demographics out of the very multiplier effects that made Boston so rich to begin with. And the reality is, when half your city is locked out of asset ownership, the local economy eventually loses the ability to generate new wealth from within.
And that sets the stage for Chapter 4, the brink, the 2026 Black Swan. You know, a city can usually absorb internal cracks for decades, but Boston's modern model relies really heavily on outside partnerships. And right now, there's a ticking clock. The catalyst for a major crisis is a sudden policy shift from the federal government, which recently announced a dramatic cut to the share of medical research grants that can be used for institutional overhead. Basically, this slashed the indirect cost recovery rates that fund everything from lab equipment to administrative staff at these massive hospitals and universities. One Boston venture capitalist actually described it as a black swan event, an unexpected shock so sudden and encompassing that no one had even modeled it. It instantly blew multi-hundred-million-dollar holes in institutional budgets. It's a really stark reminder of just how reliant this ostensibly independent brain economy is on federal policy.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the biotech industry is already feeling the chill. If we look at the massive boom of biotech IPOs in Massachusetts back in 2021 and compare it to the total collapse by 2025, where we saw only 2 IPOs occur, the trend is just jarring. On top of that, MIT's president recently disclosed that research has actually fallen approximately 10%, and graduate student enrollment is down as international students start looking elsewhere. Across the board, universities are slowing spending, they're cutting staff, and they are rapidly shifting their posture from triumph to triage.
So, what does this all mean? We are left with a massive open question for the city's future. Boston's greatest vulnerability right now isn't just federal funding cuts. It's the fact that the exclusionary costs of living there are beginning to suffocate the very talent pipeline that built the empire in the first place. The city has successfully reinvented itself for 250 years by knowing exactly when to pivot. So the question is, will Boston find a way to throw its dying models overboard one more time to save its brain economy, or has it finally built a moat so deep that it trapped itself inside? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this leaves you with a lot to think about regarding the future of America's smartest city.